Yeah. How's he liking it?
We have the entire front row.
Should we say, okay. Do you guys need to show it?
There are four of you. There are four chairs.
Yeah, he's like self-supported and loved, and now he's.
Oh, I think the last one. I wouldn't do it.
There will be a signal. Thanks. Maybe everyone's getting settled.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. If you did not know where you are, this is Laughing Books presents the Shumaker Prairie Schooner Book Prize in Fiction winner, Janelle Bassett, in conversation with Jasmine Sawers. So we are very excited for tonight's event. Left Bank Books is St. Louis's oldest independent bookstore. You are here in 55 of our years. We present over 200 author events per year, and that is with your help. When you support Left Bank Books, you are helping us bring in fantastic authors to present to the St. Louis literary community. You are also helping support your libraries to keep those free, to make your parks free and accessible to people. You're also doing simple things like fixing potholes by paying for the streets. So when you shop local, your money goes directly back into the St. Louis community, and it is very important that you do so. So we thank you for supporting Left Bank Books and for supporting local business. A little bit more about tonight's book. Thanks for This Riot stories. Back to page 1. Timothy Schaffert, the author of The Perfume Thief, which I loved, and the Titanic Survivors Book Club says, Janelle Bassett's voice is one I can't get enough of. The stories in Thanks for This Riot are fresh and unique and wickedly off-kilter, but also burn with a wry, age-old, ironic wisdom. This collection is bitingly funny, but sincerely so, with little lies and harmless untruths taking on an edge and inflicting irresistible damage. Thanks for This Riot explores the limits of kindness, the weight of being needed, and the fear of being misunderstood. A group counselor is taunted by a truth-divining piano bench. A voice actor shouts her abortion at the state capitol. Could happen any day. A tired caregiver tangles with a pair of stand-up comics. A small-town newspaper office shelters an otherworldly tattletale. A backwoods acupuncturist leans on her least exciting offspring. A girl in a strapless bra takes a vengeful go-kart ride, and a woman gets surgery to lower her expectations. She thinks it went okay. Grouped by types of riot, external riots, internal riots, and laugh riots. Thanks for This Riot is a poignant and mordantly funny collection with a distinctly feminist viewpoint. We are so happy to be able to celebrate this book. This is your first book, and I'm certain that the first of many. So we are very excited to celebrate this book tonight. Our speakers this evening, I'll introduce our conversation partner first, the esteemed Jasmine Sawers. Jasmine is an Indiana University MFA alum whose work has been supported by fellowships from Kundiman, Lambda Literary, and the Mendocino Coast Writers Conference, and others. They currently serve as a senior editor at Smoke Long Quarterly and fiction editor at Blanket Gravity. Their work has appeared in many fine journals and won awards from Plowshares, Nanofiction, and Fractured Lit. Their book, The Anchored World, was a finalist for the 2023 Penn Robert W. Bingham Prize for Debut Short Story Collection. Originally from Buffalo, they now live and pet dogs in the St. Louis area. I did forget to mention we have some upcoming events. So instead of just interrupting here and telling you about those incredible events, we have a ton of events in September. Short stories, fiction, weird fiction, amazing fiction, something for every reader in September. I'll tell you about those after if you really want to know. But let's introduce our fantastic author. Janelle Bassett's writing appears or is forthcoming in The Rumpus, Indiana Review, Smoke Long Quarterly, American Literary Review, The Offing, Washington Square Review, Wigleaf, and Best Microfiction 2023. She lives in St. Louis and is a fiction editor at Split Lip magazine. Without further ado, would you all please help me in welcoming our incredible guest for this evening.
And I'm so pleased to be here with my dear friend, Janelle. I'm also just so happy that soon, I think the nation will know how great Janelle is. Some of us have known for years now. But this is a horrible way to start, I'm sorry. I'm gonna start with a complaint. It's a very shameful thing as a short story writer to admit that I have difficulty reading short story collections. And I'll tell you why. I think the state of the short story in the American literary world right now is sort of this elaborate game of emperor's new clothes, where we pretend that nothing, we read that nothing happened, and then we pretend that that's profound. And I despise this. But I found Janelle's book was nothing like that at all. For me, a lot of that really rests on an ending. And all of her endings were just explosive, impactful. They really hit you where you live. And I'm just so pleased that I finally have in my hands a short story collection worth reading. Oops. But anyway, on that note, can we talk about your endings? Because sincerely, I hate so many endings, and yours were so excellent. Is there an ending that you struggled with, or do you know where your stories are going to end up when you start them? Like, do you have a plan the whole time?
More or less. I didn't intend to, but I noticed that I kept ending on like little acts of violence. And I was like, do I have like an anger problem? But I don't think I do. I don't know. Yeah, I will often have a moment in mind when I start the story. But I don't always know how I'm going to reach it.
Cool. Look at my notes. So speaking of structures, so this is three structures, a 3-act play, if you will. So we've got external riots, internal riots, and then laugh riots. Was that something that you had sent to the contest as it was, or they didn't impose that on you?
No, I had been sending out a version of this collection since I think 2019, and it wasn't structured into the 3 groups, and it was also some different stories. But after I had the idea to put it into the 3 groups, which I didn't write toward those groups, my stories just kind of fell into them already. Then yeah, I sent it to Prairie, Schooner with those categories. And I think it made it more competitive because they weren't really all that related, but then it sort of made it more themed.
And then the same characters show up again.
It's like a Goodreads review for short stories. Why are these so short? These are all too short.
None of the same characters showed up.
Yeah.
This book is weird. I think it's imperative that we talk about the female characters in these stories, not because there aren't many male characters, which is fine, but just because I think they're so, how am I wrote it down and yet here I stand, not reading it. I view womanhood in this story collection as this sort of force of its own. Like there's so many characters in here who are sort of pushing at the restraint of womanhood while not necessarily chafing at the label of womanhood, perhaps. And I also was really struck by how you were writing your younger characters as like growing into the sort of wildness of the force of womanhood. And I was wondering, like, how can I put it?
I know what you mean.
Right, it was just, how are you viewing gender throughout this, I guess?
Okay, I think, so actually, I didn't put in the description of this book when I was sending it out that it was a feminist collection ever. I mean, I am a feminist and I know that some of my stories have that perspective, but I always felt like maybe I wasn't like educated enough to claim that or something. Like I don't know, I didn't grow up, you know, in a family that was having those kind of discussions around the dinner table. Yeah, I didn't study in school, but it was really welcome when that was sort of like put onto it, and the Kirkus Review mentioned it. I was like, oh, okay. But I think the characters are rebelling against the confines of their femininity, but I don't know that they know that that's what they're rebelling against, especially the younger ones.
Yeah, absolutely. The very first story in this collection, which is a real cracker. I'm so glad they opened with this one because, you know, the voice is so immersive, and also like it ends on this wonderful little act of violence. But she's so hemmed in by like everything in her life. You know, her mother exerts just sort of iron control over her. Her friends don't really like her. She's at this like play park and has essentially no money, right? And is just like waiting for this to end. But she has this one thing she wants, right? And that's to show her shoulders off. And to do so in her grandmother's strapless bra. But she gets there, and then all she is self-conscious, right? But the end, she's rebelling against her mother, her friends, her own self-consciousness. But I also felt like the idea that you have to restrain yourself at all, right? And I love that. And one of the things that's just a great through line through these stories is embodiment. I found that the characters are so deeply in their bodies, and you have a fantastic way of capturing like awkwardness and just like this way of sort of assessing and calculating every single movement, because they're so hyper aware of the way they're perceived. And meanwhile, of course, you're entering the world and all you are is perceived. Like they have these very internal lives, but it's like they have to do a performance to be in the world.
You should talk. Can you tell all this to like my therapist, because this is like my experience of being alive.
Well, I was gonna ask, right? Like, how do you capture this so well? Especially with, I think, your younger characters who are just first forging their ways in the world. And the second to last story is a 82-year-old protagonist, and she doesn't give a shit anymore. She's like, here I am. And I love that as well. And that's really a very embodied character as well, but she's completely comfortable So can you speak to a little bit about like the physicality that you wrote throughout this book?
Yeah, that's really interesting because it's not something I've been intentional about. I think that that is just the experience that I've had in my body. And so when I am making a character, that's just how I approach it. My first memory as a child was I was in a car seat and the jacket I had on was tight around my wrists and I was getting hot.
Oh.
And I was little and I felt like, I think I was like too young to express it. Anyway, the fact that like that physical sensation was my first memory, I think is kind of meaningful. So I don't know.
Well, you're talking about, again, being restrained
Yes.
and like really against your will, like someone put you in that
Yes.
jacket.
Yeah, exactly. And I was buckled in.
Yeah. And then you were like, I'm sure that
Yes.
you cried, right? Like, it's uncomfortable. Something that I was also noticing, and I was connecting it to this idea of embodiment, and I don't know if they're actually connected or if I was just like, I'm making connections. It's happening. But I noticed that like the feeling throughout the stories, many of the stories, perhaps not all, but I think maybe all, was the sort of longing for connection, and even just especially from strangers, which is a very interesting longing, I think. And I was also getting the feeling of Sonder throughout this. And if you don't know what Sonder is, it's like when I look at you and you are a stranger to me, but I suddenly have a high awareness that you have an entire internal life as deep and meaningful as mine. And so like throughout this story collection, your characters often meet or have glancing contact with strangers and then imagine or even mourn the fact that they don't have a deeper connection with these people. So can you speak a little bit about connection and longing here, perhaps especially in regards to strangers?
I think I am a weird person in that I kind of like chit chat small talk that doesn't mean anything. I mean, I don't want all my conversation to be surface level, but I like that moment of like with the cashier and you just find something in common and it's just like this brief shared space with this person who I might not actually have in common with and this person I might not actually like if I got to know. But I think I'm just genuinely curious about everyone and about what their experience has been like. And I like that with strangers that you just like have a fresh start.
And I think something else with this, and the Sonder with strangers is the workings of the imagination. Like you have imagined this entire life, and I think a lot of times with people who are like quite cerebral and more introverted, your inner life very much outshines your outer life. And I felt like that was something that came through a great deal in many of these stories.
So that one of the stories, what's it called? Doesn't matter. Was, you know that thing where you see people in public and you make up a story about them? Like you make up their backstory, even though you don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
So,
The expectation levels one, right?
oh, no, it's the one with the stepmom and the art museum.
Okay, yep.
Anyway, I was at the art museum and I saw this family doing the craft and I just made all these assumptions about their relationships and the way they treated each other. And yeah, that's where that story came from.
That's awesome.
It's probably very unfair, a lot of it.
I mean, the thing is, you'll never know, right? And so, like, there's this version of them that only lives in your mind, and thought crimes aren't real. So you can think whatever you want. But connected to that, even this sense of connection, I I noted a lot of invocation of love throughout this. And I don't know if it's just like my own upbringing in a very like stiff family where there's like no expression of love.
Are they watching?
No, they're not even in this country. Anyway, but it's interesting to me how so many of these characters, despite a lot of their isolation and how like inward their lives are turned, that they're like extremely generous with love, even just the word love. Meanwhile, they don't seem to perceive that they're getting it themselves. So it seemed that it was just really interesting to me that characters who are deprived of connection in this way could still be so generous with their own affections. And I don't know if that's a question, it's not a question, but can you talk about it a little?
Well, my family might be watching this. But, you can imagine. No, yeah, I think maybe, too, for some of the characters, it feels safer to, put things out into the world than to receive it. And it sort of like invades their privacy.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that actually loops back to something else that we were talking about with the strangers and the Sonder and everything, which is that it's safe to extend your imaginary affections to people you don't know, because they essentially can't hurt you, right? And so, so I think there's
like no baggage.
right. So it's subconscious, but it's this choice that they're making to invest the love they have in people they're never going to see again.
I would have been so good at dating, but I didn't really get to.
If you hit the jackpot the first time, you don't have to pay, right? You know, it's all good. For me, I just I wanted to say, I'm sure no one here has read anything by A.L. Kennedy, but she's one of my absolute favorite living writers, and she's sort of a master of the short story form. And one of the things she's known for is these really amazing, perfectly crafted little sentences that cast the mundane into a completely new light, like you've never thought about something like that before, and then it's obvious because she told you, right? And I felt very much like that's what I was reading with your work, like so many of these wonderful sentences, and you know, further than that, paragraphs and so on, but especially the endings, as I keep mentioning. But like I was just like admiring the hell out of it, and I really think that this collection, I hope that it's like a bestseller. I think this is fantastic. It's really one of the best things that I've read in a really long time, and I'm not saying that just because I like you. I'm not that good of a friend. But anyway, I think everyone should read it, especially if you like Janelle's work. I think that they can be in conversation with each other. Although A.L. Kennedy is Scottish, so a lot of her books just aren't here. So it's a bit of a shame in that way.
I do think, because you're my Flash friend, I do think that writing Flash makes my sentences a lot better.
I think everyone should write Flash because of that. The muscularity of the Flash sentence, and also just there's no room for chaff in Flash, so you gotta be each sentence better be hitting like a knife.
Well, all of our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, so just like get to it and leave us alone.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I wrote too much. Well, I think we're a little bit pushing time. Why don't we have you read?
Okay.
And then we can open up the floor for questions, and that'll be that.
Oh, that sounds good. Oh, I was gonna say, so I was here 2 years ago for your reading, for your wonderful book. And we knew each other, but we weren't like, we hadn't hung out a bunch, so we were like acquaintances more than friends. And I remember coming that I was feeling so jealous because I had been sending out my book, my collection so many times, and it was like, Jasmine has this thing that I don't think I'm actually gonna get. But then I came and you read, and I just like your writing so much, and I was like, no, things are right in the world. Jasmine should have this book. So anyway, this is like a full circle moment for me.
No, that's very nice. That's very nice. But yeah, I the thing is, I mean, writing is such a long road. I started that collection 10 years before it came out. And guys, it's about this big.
It's great.
It's like 17,000 words altogether. It's like 33 stories. So it's very, very short. But somehow this took 10 years. And I don't know if you had this experience in publishing. Maybe you did. People would come out of the woodwork to tell me, no one wants your flash, and no one will publish a flash collection. Call me when you've got a novel. And so my little book went farther than I thought it would, and I couldn't have ever imagined that a flash collection would do such a thing. So actually, that was another question I had for you. This is a mixture of not only flash, but short stories, but also speculative and realist stories. Were you ever pressured to choose one or the other?
No, so the version of this book has changed over time, but as it went along, I just tried to make it the best version. And so I didn't ask anyone if I was allowed to put flash in it. I just decided what were my best stories, and a few of those were flash, and I don't know, they let me get away with it.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, here's the thing. I think, unfortunately, because it's a publishing industry, and unfortunately we have very little to do with it. Flash and short stories and novels and all these things, they have these labels for marketing. It doesn't tell you anything but how they're going to market it, if they're marketing it at all, right? And so, like, if you look at our oldest stories, which are, oral folk tales, stuff like that, some of them are very short. I've got a book of fairy tales at home. My very first book when I was a little kid. The first story is The Princess and the Pea, and it's about 1 page. And I think, that's still a short story. You don't have to call it flash. It's old. Like, flash is a very new term, right? And so, like, I don't think it's like, oh no, one of your stories in here is 3 pages, who cares,
Yeah.
right? Like, if it's a full, complete arc, it's got these great muscular flash sentences, right? Then it belongs in the collection, especially when a collection, and you're sending it out, like, it has to be as good as it can be to impress someone. And obviously this impressed, one of the best fiction contests in the country. And so, like, I think you should be extremely proud. And I'm excited. I'm excited for you, and I'm excited for everyone who gets to read this book.
Thank you. Should I read some flash?
I think you should read some flash.
Okay.
I won't even make you read my favorite one. I literally, I think you should read it.
Well, you told me there was one story that made you gag, and I was like, that's high praise.
That's the one. So,
I'm not reading that one.
don't read that one. I loved it. I think it's amazing. Literally, one of these great endings that I keep talking about, right? But so viscerally gross that I gagged, and I think that's a testament to Janelle's wonderful skill.
I want a blurb from you that just says gag.
Gag. All right, I think you talked about reading the head detachment one.
Yeah.
Cool.
So what do I do?
Okay, here.
I don't remember titles, so I'm like, head detachment, sounds good.
I got it. Thank you. It takes a village. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to read No Space is Too Small When Your Head is Detachable. I look out my window more than I should, but that's only because I believe that most people are up to something. I think, aha, even before I part the blinds. Aha, I caught you picking your wedgie or your nose while failing to pick up after your dog. Or, aha, you're busted. I see the way you're leering at those porch packages. You want to nab them. Your stupid heart hopes they contain small electronics, even though we both know you're going to end up with a month's supply of pet kibble. I work from home. I live alone. It's possible that I'm lonely, but not for anyone I've met so far. I really shouldn't have my desk right by the window, but I moved it to the far wall once before and wore myself out walking back and forth every time I heard a horn or a footstep or a prolonged silence. I'm actually a wonderful neighbor, thoughtful, attentive. When the guy across the street had his third wife leave him and his second heart attack in the same week, I set a bag of sweet potatoes at his door with a note that said, "If you want me to mow your lawn, let me know by Thursday afternoon because I'll have to rearrange my weekend plans." And on Halloween, I give out those Tootsie Roll tubes that can be used as piggy banks once they're empty. So I'm giving the kids immediate happiness with the twisted up sugar, but also future happiness when their nickels clink up, up, up. This morning, I can't get the daily cash flow spreadsheet to come out right. I'm off by a factor of 9, so I know I've transposed 2 numbers, but spending 40 minutes looking for a split-second slip-up of my index finger makes me wonder if the life I'm living is worth all the diaper changing my parents put in. I eventually find the mixed-up digits, 7 and 9, odd fucks. And then I hear the bike crew. Always so shouty, the bike crew. Something about pedaling their legs makes these neighborhood kids feel the need to go full volume. There are typically only 5 or 6 of them, but at any given moment, 2 of them are yelling, "Wait for me!" The group tends to roam unsupervised. But when there's a wreck or a shoving match, parents materialize with antibiotic ointments and long, straight arms to break up tussles. I'm happy to see any sort of parental responsibility in this neighborhood, even if it comes post-blood, too late. I look down at the sidewalk, but no, the children still aren't cute. So too old, too determined to be active. But they all wear cartoon animal t-shirts, so maybe they know they need the boost in cuteness. They ride past 12 times, according to the tally on this post-it. And right when I've learned to incorporate their twice-a-minute noise parade into my work mindset, they stop. I peek out right away, but not, I can assure you, out of concern. Anyone who's made double-digit tally marks about something can't help becoming invested in an outcome. They've stopped next door at Laura Beth's house. Looks like today is shaping up to be her yard junk day based on the motorcycle helmet and what is that, a meat grinder on her lawn. I don't know if Laura Beth is a hoarder, but she clearly likes to hold on to things. Her house is packed wall to wall with stuff she can't even sit on or screw light bulbs into. Her adult children made her promise she'd get rid of 8 items a month, so they'll be left with that much less when she's gone. And once she hits age 75, she has to up it to 12 items a week, speed round. So every so often, she has a casual yard sale, one without a sign or price stickers, one where she has to grasp her porch railing with both hands to keep from grabbing her belongings back from the looky-loos. The bike crew love Laura Beth's giveaways, though I certainly don't know what most of the items are. Last month, I watched a 6-year-old Natankini drag a leaf blower home. One of the kids is cranking the meat grinder while the others cheer. How obscene. Laura Beth comes back out with a fireplace poker, a throw pillow, 3 rulers, and a box of tampons. I wonder what her offspring would say about her counting the rulers as 3 separate items instead of bundling them into one. Smells like a workaround to me, Laura Beth. Right away, the blonde twins go for the tampons. I'm sure they'll scratch each other's eyes out, but instead, They work together to open the box and pass tampons out to the crowd, like celebratory cigars. A ruler sword fight breaks out, but the kid with the fireplace poker ends it. Laura Bath goes inside, maybe because she doesn't want to be responsible for any of the eyeball damage that feels increasingly likely. The children's pockets are full of tampons, so they look pretty stupid, but also pretty rich. Someone grinds a tampon through the meat grinder. Someone is comically pregnant with a throw pillow. The littlest one in skinny jeans, despite still being baby-shaped, sits down in the motorcycle helmet and turns it into a fun seat by spinning it around. Too many free thrills going on down there. Too much mess. And now they, as a group, are knocking on Laura Beth's door. When she opens up, one asks, "Can we have more?" And I don't hear her answer because I'm already heading downstairs to talk to them about propriety. By the time I get there, Laura Beth is hauling out a tall metal cabinet with some difficulty. I yell at the two biggest children to stop standing there, to grab the bottom of the cabinet. As the three of them maneuver down the porch steps, I pick decimated tampon out of the ground and tell the kid in skinny jeans that they better not potty in that helmet. There's an argument about who will take the cabinet home. Someone wants to store their Lego collection in it. Someone wants to fill it with potatoes and water them until they sprout long eyes. Someone's thinking of Mother's Day, of painting it yellow for her. I tell Laura Beth to go rest, but I'll clean up the mess. I tell the children that whoever takes the cabinet will need an adult and maybe a chocolate, and they scatter to find the closest adult and the quickest drop. The rulers are gone, but I lay the fire poker on the pillow and turn the helmet over respectfully. A real person could use these, the kind of person who's done growing. I start to go back home, but then I get curious about whether I fit into the metal cabinet. I have a small frame. My hips are bendy. My head is practically detachable. I try it, and I do fit. It's tight, but I can close the door. I wonder how long until a kid comes to claim this thing. I wonder why I'm in here. I wonder if I want to scare someone. Say boo, say stop, say this isn't yours, not everything is for you. Or if what I really want is to join the crew who move their legs fast and take what they want and aren't very cute at all.
I also want to, number one, thank you, that was pretty. Number two, just point out that one of the things that makes Janelle a wonderful writer and all these stories so great is that they really resist cliche, right? Like I think that story could have gone in a way that we could have all predicted, and maybe we would have been like fine with it, but instead she gives us something incredibly surprising and moving and interesting and just something we haven't read before, and I really appreciate that about this book and you. So
Thank you.
we have questions from the audience.
And the virtual audience as well. If you have a question, type it into the comments.
Okay.
Sure. I'm gonna think through it as I go, so.
Okay. Perfect.
But in the, here, let's see, in the private cottage, so the second story, you did a really good job of capturing comedy, like the types of comedy that are out there. I feel like the types of comedians that people love for various reasons, but I was just wondering, and you did a really good job of writing the jokes that they would tell. But what was your process? Did you watch comedy specials or did that just come to you?
I guess I've just always been a consumer of comedy. So that story was inspired by, during the pandemic, I listened to the Endless Honeymoon podcast a lot. Anybody? So it's a married couple, and they're both comics. It's Moshe Kasher and Natasha Leggero. Anyway, so it was during the pandemic, and they had a little girl, and they said that they went on vacation to this place. And I was like, what if you were the person next to them on vacation? And anyway, so that was where the story came from. But I guess I based their stand-up a little bit on those two comics' actual, kind of like more their persona than their actual comedy. Yeah. But I guess, yeah, hers was more of a persona, and his was more like word.
Like the wondering.
Yes, yeah.
That's good.
Thank you.
I would watch this.
More questions?
Fantastic.
Do you have any advice for unpublished writers, having gone through a pretty long period yourself of doing that?
Let's see. Well, so I didn't start writing until I was in my early 30s, and I'm in my 30s for like a few more months. I don't know. I guess my advice is to, maybe you have better advice on this. Make what you want to make, but then find, like, do your research to find where you're sending it to see, like, that it's a good fit, instead of just, I think I made that mistake in the beginning of just not knowing what journals were actually like, or what their vibe was like, or what kind of work they published. I'm just like, get a load of this, and it's like, they knowing that now, it's like, well, they're never going to publish a story like that because they don't publish stories like that. So yeah, I guess my advice is just knowing where you're sending.
Thank you.
Oh, please, God, no. I don't need a microphone. Okay. Can you describe, like, the physical place where you write and what time of day you write?
Okay, so that's a good question. I haven't been writing lately, so I'm casting back. But for most of this story was written in the early morning while my kids were asleep. So it was like still dark outside, and I drank too much coffee and hunched up in a chair by myself and wrote weird stuff and spilled coffee on myself quite a bit. But yeah, it's and most of it was written on my phone. It hasn't been good for my back. I'm trying to write more on a laptop and at a desk. But then it feels like too formal and I get freaked out.
Hi.
Hi.
So I wanted to ask, you said that you have been, like this collection has gone through multiple iterations. Can you elaborate a little more on like how it evolved and how you decided which stories to drop and which stories to keep?
Yeah, sure. So I think I never expected to write one story, much less a book full of stories. So once I had enough stories to fill a book, I was like, okay, that's how you make a book. And started sending it out, but it really wasn't ready. It wasn't my best work, and it wasn't polished. But I do think that sort of like naive excitement kept me going with the process. But then as I kept writing more stories, I would pick the duds out and replace them with better ones, and then it slowly got stronger. And then once I had the themes, it really took more of a shape, and I think became more competitive and less random.
Hi.
Hello.
So I'm wondering if you can talk a little more about your process. And you mentioned a couple of things that inspired you. And I'm wondering, is it where you are hit with inspiration in the middle of the podcast, so you pause it and you get your phone out and you start writing, or do you mull it over in your brain? Like, how does that look for you?
If I make a lot of notes in my phone and the notes apps, but it'll just be like one sentence or one phrase, and then I'll look at it a couple weeks later and I'll be like, I have no idea what that means. But I have found that for writing a good story, I need more than one idea. I actually need like 3 ideas. Do you find this? Or like 3 inspirations for it. So like the first story, the more restrictive than supportive, was based on an actual memory, and then it was also inspired by this reality show that I was watching, and I think a third thing, and the Your Favorite About the Sloth was inspired by the Britney Spears documentary, but also Coco, the gorilla. So I don't know. I find that the story is richer if it has actually like 2 or 3 ideas in it.
Do we want to move to the signing?
Well, let's
Oh.
see if they have,
Oh, yes, thank you.
questions.
Because there are. Thank you for reminding me. So Sarah is asking, Janelle, did any of the stories in the collection end up surprising you in a big way during the writing or revising process?
Probably. Let me think. Let me look at the names of my stories. I think Prove It, which is the one about, it's a woman who, she works at like a retirement community, and she is a counselor there, and she is trying to do a session, and there is this bench that's maybe making people lie, or no, it's maybe making people tell the truth, but also they might just be messing with her. Anyway, the ending of that, where she finally sits on the bench, ended up being really personal to me in a way that I didn't anticipate. And I don't know, I think it expressed something about myself, like a deep thing that I didn't really intend to. So yeah. Just about, I guess, like being guarded, maybe.
Well, let's give another giant round of applause to our presenters. I know a lot of you did purchase your books ahead of time. We do have more available for sale for both of our fantastic authors this evening. We're going to do the signing right back here at the back of the room tonight. We're switching things up. I want to thank you all so much for coming out tonight. There are a lot of things going on, and it's really fantastic that you chose to come here tonight. So thank you for being here.